Hi folks, so we have a transit tomorrow that is of interest to us right now. As you know, those of you who followed my eclipse summary video a few videos ago, if you look at my history you'll find it. Since then, you know, I've been focused on the sign of Gemini because the first of the eclipses that I want to break down is the eclipse on June the 5th in the sign of Sagittarius. And that eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius is a full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. And the sun is going to be in Gemini opposing the moon and aligned with the earth so that we have an eclipse. The moon is going to be opposed by the sun, Mercury, a retrograde Venus, and the south node, and the north node. So the sign of Gemini, while the eclipse is technically not taking place in Gemini, Gemini is very much involved. And the new set of eclipses that we're dealing with, this is repeated content for people who are seeing this video for the first time as opposed to the others. The eclipses are changing signs. So we have the last of the Cancer and Capricorn eclipses on June the 20th and July the 4th respectively this year, and the first of the Gemini Sagittarius eclipses on June the 5th, the first of these eclipses that we're talking about. Tomorrow, May the 20th, two notable things happen. Venus and Neptune square. It's the second of three squares, and that's what this particular video is about. And the sun enters Gemini. So we've got Mercury in Gemini, strong and powerful in his own sign. My last video was about Mercury in Gemini. I'll post a link to that at the end of this so you can catch up on that and see that. Venus retrograde in Gemini. There are at least a couple of videos on Venus in Gemini that are out there. One a Venus in Gemini and another Venus retrograde, and now I'm doing a Venus square Neptune. So there's plenty to talk about there. And now the sun enters. There's going to be a separate new moon in Gemini video because the new moon follows on May the 22nd. So tomorrow these transits happen on the 22nd. We've got the new moon occurring, and then 2 weeks after the new moon on June the 4th, June the 5th, depending on where you are, we've got the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. Now, with all of this in place, while the full moon lunar eclipse is in Sagittarius with all these planets opposing in Gemini, those of you who've been watching my videos have also noted that you cannot ignore the sign of Pisces at this time, because there's a conversation that is in place right now between these planets in Gemini and the planets in Pisces. And the reason why they're important, when we look at lunations, new moons and full moons and eclipses, but new moons and full moons, we look for transits that are particularly active at that time, that can contribute to telling us the story or give us a sense of where the story is happening, or where certainly a significant part of the story is happening. And the lunations, the last one, this coming one especially, this new moon in Gemini, and indeed this full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, both have very strong aspects to planets in Pisces that cannot be ignored. And this is also a theme I've developed in the past few videos, where with Pisces, there was some sort of a crisis in late 2015, 2016, something needed to be released, but it was more complicated than that. And then the retrogrades, Mercury retrogrades in Pisces have continued to develop or try to help us spiral out of that story. There was a Mercury retrograde in Pisces in March and April of 2019, and one in February, March of this year. Those are all themes, those are all ways, if you don't know where Pisces is in your chart, to try and identify where this crisis may have occurred. For those of you who know which houses are occupied by Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, you may already have a sense of the storm brewing. And it is a storm because the sign of Pisces is square, is at a right angle to the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius, which oppose each other. And a square always denotes tension, at the very least, conflict, very probably, but a kind of deadlock situation. And I described it as sort of gears or something sort of getting locked to each other and not being able to either reverse back or move forward in any significant way. So you need something powerful, some sort of a almost a quantum leap in consciousness understanding, a quantum leap in action, a quantum leap in thought and belief that is followed up by a resulting action to kind of shift the gears altogether, or to release the, to ascend to ascend from the situation, so that in a certain sense this gear change thing, which is still there and still active, just kind of dissolves or disappears by itself. It isn't even a question of it moving. It just ceases to be present in such a significant way. And so there's an opportunity for growth, there's an opportunity for a quantum leap in perception or action, there's an opportunity to change ourselves and therefore change situations around us, however we choose to do so. Now the planets in question, of course, are the Sun and Mercury and Venus retrograde right now. And in the sign of Pisces, we've got Neptune that rules Pisces, and at least till June the 29th, we've got Mars in there now, the planet of action and pursuit and passion. Here's how this chronology works. I actually wrote it down. May the 3rd was the first Venus-Neptune square. Okay, May the 3rd. So there are things that have been escalating since that time. May the 3rd I look at as the first blow from a relationship perspective, and I'll expand on that in a second. May the 20th, tomorrow. So May the 3rd, Venus squares Neptune. Let me do it this way. May the 3rd, Venus squares Neptune. She's going direct. May the 13th, Venus starts going retrograde. And on the 20th, I think it was May the 13th when Venus went retrograde. Please feel free to check. May the 13th. May the 13th, Venus went retrograde. And on the 20th, she squares Neptune again. She's retrograding. On June the 25th, she goes direct, and she squares Neptune again for the final time on July the 27th. Okay? So Neptune is slowly moving in Pisces, and then you have this kind of Venus first time squares Neptune, May the 3rd, May the 20th, the second blow. Venus goes direct on the 9th, good Lord, the 25th of May, 25th of June, and then on the 27th of July squares Neptune the third and final time. May the 3rd, Venus squares Neptune. May the 20th, tomorrow, she squares Neptune again the second time, and the Sun enters Gemini, preparing us for the new moon in Gemini on the 22nd. On the 22nd, Mercury, which is only going direct, squares Neptune as well. So at the time of the new moon in 2 days' time, a retrograde Venus and Mercury are very, very close together. I will develop that. On June the 2nd, a retrograde Venus squares Mars. On June the 6th, the Sun squares Mars. And on June the 5th, the day before that, we have had the eclipse. So the new moon in Gemini, occurs when a retrograde Venus and Mercury together are squaring Neptune in Pisces. Just bear with me, just get the dates and the facts first. And when we get to the full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on June the 5th, we've got Venus and the Sun close together squaring Mars and Neptune, okay? And then, of course, after that, as some of this energy starts to clear and planets start to move into the sign of Cancer and Venus moves direct on the 25th of June, on the 27th, we have the final so-called blue blow with Venus and Neptune. Now, the Mars squares in Pisces I will develop as we get close to the full moon lunar eclipse. Let's focus, this video is about Venus square Neptune. And because out of all of these transits, it's the Venus square Neptune that happens 3 times, there's no question that is the transit, even though she's not ruling anything. The Venus squaring Neptune is where the story is really occurring. We've got the planet Venus, the planet of relationships, money, links between relationships and money. Some would say the arts and beauty. For me, very much the planet of natural flow, balance, harmony, abundance. And therefore, for me, the planet of love. Natural flow, harmony, balance, opportunities that come out of natural flow, out of everything feeling and being right and in balance and harmony. Natural harmony. Harmony in relationships, balance, give and take. listening, the development of peace, of accord, of treaties. But treaty is not the right word, because treaties can be unfair. The attempt to balance and harmonize situations. If Mars, Venus's counterpart and in some respects opposite, is the planet of pursuit and desire, and therefore the planet of ego, Venus, the more passive, the more feminine planet, is attempting to move in a direction of egolessness and natural flow and harmony, love. We've got her squaring Neptune, the planet of dissolution. And by dissolution I mean dissolving, erasing, moving out of the constraints and realities of 3D existence, which are managed by Saturn. Connecting you towards spirit, connecting you towards a sense of wholeness, connecting you to your soul, connecting perhaps to the truth, but in ways that are uncomfortable and don't really have a relationship to the egoic realities that we have to contend with while we're here. We have to feed ourselves, we have to clothe ourselves, we have to have shelter at the very minimum, one could argue. We have ambitions, we have desires, we have attachments, and then a planet like Neptune comes along and says, no, 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 all of that is false. Nothing actually belongs to you. You may actually have to do nothing, it doesn't matter. Anyway, one day you're going to be dead and you're going to merge with the absolute and you're not taking anything with you, so what is the point? And as it is, anything you think you're building up is going to be dissolved. Everything is under God's control. Anyway, what is the point? Neptune has a powerful place. He's an intensely spiritual and intensely powerful planet, but the spirituality is not intuition as much as it is mysticism. When people go into sort of the Rumi-like space of merging with the absolute, or the Bhakti poets in India, or intense devotion, renunciation, giving things up, listening to music of different spheres, checking out, spacing out, and then in more extreme situations when it comes to drugs and addiction and shutting off the mental noise and all that kind of stuff and releasing certain bonds, Neptune plays a powerful role in things like that. In more direct terms, Neptune can be associated in the way we experience him as the muses, inspiration, arts, ideas, fantasies, connection with spirit, spirituality in an ecstatic sense, in a sense of being alone with God in a certain sense and feeling the sense of oneness, as opposed to being alone with God and getting intuition around how to live your life on this planet. And most essentially and interestingly, loss, because Neptune, there's this kind of thing where the gods of the fates know what is not for you, what you cannot have, what you will not have. A certain kind of relationship with someone, a certain possession, a certain job, a certain something that you might be attached, that you think is due to you, that you desire, that you're hankering for. Neptune comes along and says, not for you. And of course, the idea of Neptune saying not for you is in some way meant to free you and help you move forward. But those of us who deal with attachment, and we all do, are in a place where we're just like, what do you mean not for us? That is where some of my sense of whatever lies, security, comfort, desire, and Neptune goes, no. Neptune in some regards can be really, there's a link energetically between Neptune and the nodes, the north node and the south node. Some people equate Neptune with the north node. I really equate Neptune more with the south node in terms of what it is that needs to be released, that is actually perhaps holding you back, that will actually allow you to move forward in ways and be free in ways that Spirit knows, but it's somehow challenged. When Neptune has to exercise this loss, sometimes this loss is exercised through deception, theft, lies, illusion, smoke and mirrors, gaslighting. And our human attachment and resistance to change, attachment to things as they are and resistance to change is so strong that often God or Spirit has no choice but to employ means to exercise his or her will. So a layoff, cheating of some kind, theft, deception. These are all ways in which things can happen or occur because left to our own devices, we may not listen to or be paying attention to what is not useful for us or good for us, so necessary for all those kinds of things. When you have the planet of relationship and love, direct, retrograde, and direct again, in the sign of Gemini, communication, squaring Neptune, the planet of renunciation. Oh wow. Sorry about that. That was windy. It got windy and it blew my camera down. So, and it's put me in the shade somehow, so I don't know what I'm gonna, whatever. Okay, I'm back, I think, on some level. I also showered, my hair looks like crap. Sorry about that. I'm not gonna stop recording, it's still going. I was enjoying what I was saying. Let's just assume the winds were happy with what I was saying. Whatever. So with Neptune, when Venus, the planet of love, harmony in relationships and money, in Gemini, the sign of communication, amongst other things, fitting in with others, with Gemini, fitting in with others, squares Neptune in Pisces, the planet of renunciation and the sign of renunciation, the planet of spirit in the sign of spirit. We're really being asked to investigate and, more importantly, reevaluate certain relationships, perhaps. Now, my Venus in retrograde in Gemini video, which was, I think, the last one I did two. I did a Mercury and I did a Venus. I think I'll post links to them once I've done processing this video. We'll expand on these themes more healthily. But there are two things, most of all, I wanted to convey with the Venus retrograde squaring Neptune transit tomorrow, the second one. One is to pay attention to the dates, May the 3rd, May the 20th, June the 27th. The second is to understand that the square calls for change. It calls for change. It calls for changing the way things have been. It calls for changing yourself. One could say it calls for the need or the trying to change others, but let's leave others to themselves in terms of what it is that they change or they don't change. Ultimately, when a square is happening 3 times, there's no question in my mind that it is about escalating or excavating the truth. When I was thinking about the title of this video, there were various that came to mind. Integrity was one of them. There was gaslighting was another, kind of an interesting and very 2020 word to use. But the word that stuck with me was disillusion. And it was an interesting play on the word dissolution. DISSOLUTION, which I equate with Neptune. But disillusion, DISILLUSION, becoming disillusioned with something, a challenging aspect, but also a helpful one, because why remain in the realm of illusion? You can use the word clarity. I'm going to use the word disillusionment, just to kind of, the right word probably in the English language is disillusion, but I'm going to emphasize it with a ment, is that as the planet of relationships and money squares the planet of dissolution and loss and release, there's bound to be something that has been investigated and reevaluated, where as you look at these dates, May the 3rd, May the 20th, and June the 27th, it's almost like there are 3 blows with these new moons and these eclipses somehow in conversation with them to some sort of existing structure that is stuck in its gears. The purpose, if the blows are positive and if Venus is supposed to be successful, then one way of looking at it is to mend things or to build bridges. And one of the things I really wanted to convey with Venus's retrograde is to be careful of breaking up with people. There are 2 things with Venus in retrograde, 3 things with Venus in retrograde that we conventionally say. 1, be careful of spending money and just watch financial flow during this time. Reevaluate your finances and your expenses. 2, be careful of making significant or changes to your appearance. Be careful for going in for that hair color. Be careful for going in for that haircut. It's a strange thing to say at this time when many of us can't. Be careful of plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery. Because when Venus goes direct on June the 25th and after, we may regret or we may change our mind. Venus was retrograde and now direct, so we may think differently and perceive those changes differently. Similarly with relationships, it might be tempting as we feel the heat of May the 3rd and May the 20th and June the 22nd to go in and destroy something, or to break up with someone, or to throw the baby out with the wild, or to end something, because the disillusionment process is revealing things that are unmistakable, where the actual integrity or lack of integrity in a situation is becoming clearer. But the immediate reaction or response to this is to get clear on where the truth is or is not. And that clarity, that disillusionment is really powerful, and kind of takes your breath away to some extent. And to sit with it and to not rush, because remember, Venus, after going retrograde, is going to go direct again on the 25th. So you don't want to be in a place where after June the 25th, you are re-looking at or questioning something, a cord that you cut or something that you snipped during this retrograde period. By all means, re-evaluate, consider what needs to happen to change a particular situation, even take action. Particularly if it's communication, speaking to people, writing to people, talking to people, emails, technology, phone calls, social media, fitting in with others, whatever communication means. In the sign of Gemini, siblings, relatives become important. Your colleagues, to some extent, your neighborhood becomes important. Some of you may be dealing with some issues with cars and vehicles. When I think about Venus and Gemini, I don't know why that's coming up. I don't think it's a broad thing. It may be specific to a few people. But this idea of the planet of relationship on May the 3rd going, wait a second. And then on May the 13th going, I need to reverse and go back over this terrain again. And in doing so, meeting up with Neptune one more time on the 20th. And then on the 25th going, okay, I can start moving forward again. And on the 27th, and a month later, on the 27th of July, saying hi to Neptune again, indicates that the reversal is happening for a reason. Though, hold on a second, what just happened? What's going on? I'm going to start talking. I'm going to start communicating. I'm going to start reaching out to people. Venus, the planet of relationships and money, in Gemini, to something's not right. To inquire, investigate, communicate, reevaluate. And in that retrograde process, as we look at content that made its way to us on May the 3rd and May the 20th, and remember with the dates, it's not the date itself, it's heading to that date. Around that date, heading to that date. What are the actions that got prompted in this situation? Beware of the urge to make a hasty decision to do. You may still reach the same conclusions. If the disillusionment is of a certain kind, you may decide to stick to the plan that you're coming up with right now, or whatever it is that you're feeling like doing. And once Venus is direct, you may say, okay, I listened to this astrologer guy. He told me not to break up with this person. I'm going to wait. But in July, you choose to do the same thing, or certainly by August. I would say, since Venus is squaring Neptune again on the 27th, why not give it till August? As it is, we've got eclipse energy at play from April the 4th this year to August the 20th of this year to some extent. So why not? The energies will start to clear by the middle of July, but then we've got, here comes the wind again. I'm going to hold on to this camera so it doesn't break my screen, which it hasn't so far. Why not just wait? Give it at least till the middle of July, but then we've got this final square on the 27th of July. Who knows what that's going to bring? Confirmation of some sort, perhaps. And then why not give it till August to figure out how things need to reset, even into September, depending on the nature of the situation. That's an awfully long time, but I can't imagine that with Venus squaring Neptune, that these are just and the eclipses at play. See, if Venus was scaring Neptune and it was a normal new moon and a normal full moon, I would say, okay, maybe this is not a big deal. But when the Venus and the Sun squaring Neptune and Mars in Pisces, with the first eclipse on the 5th of June, setting the stage for eclipses that are going to become more active later this year and in 2021, this is a big deal. Venus would not go retrograde and challenge Neptune and kind of poke around and say, hold on a second, what are you doing there? Where's the loss? Where's the deception? What's going on? She wouldn't, the planet of relationships and money and love and flow and natural abundance and opportunity and joy in relationships, harmony, amicability, but it all has to be based on truth. It can't be based on gaslighting. It's just not going to be successful. And one of the things, as I was thinking about this video, and I've been thinking about it for 3 days, and I've been getting my own kind of downloads. I've started to become open to this process of thinking about something and just seeing what comes through. It's an escalating situation. It's already escalating. And part of it is that the escalation is bound to be uncomfortable by this point in time, because the process of disillusionment is not a happy one. It means that someone has lied, or is lying, or there are smoke and mirrors, or there is deception. But the situation is escalating. It's still escalating. And it's not, when you're dealing with a planet like Neptune, it isn't one thing, and it may not be one person. It may be a collective. Even if it's one situation that has multiple people involved in it, it may be multiple situations which have the same people involved in it, but more likely than not, it may be multiple situations with different people involved with it in somehow that share some sort of a theme. They may share a connection, they may not. It could be something that is true and has to be looked at with certain types of integrity breaches in relationships in one's life, how they might affect one's sense of abundance and flow and trust. It doesn't just have to be one thing. It doesn't have to be one situation. It doesn't have to be one set of parties. You may in fact be overwhelmed a little bit by these squares because they're forcing you to deal with who you are in relationship and what is affecting a certain kind of natural flow and harmony on multiple fronts. If you are ready and willing, if you value, some people have a stronger Mars nature, and they're more egoic and more fed by their desires. And they may claim that relationships are important to them, but what is more important to them is getting what they want. It's a more masculine approach. It's a more Mars approach. It doesn't matter what your gender is. Some people value a certain kind of harmony, peace, flow, but it's only possible if there's integrity all around. And by integrity, I mean it requires wisdom, it requires understanding. And so it's a question of what it is that one is after in any given situation. The balance between loving oneself and loving others when it comes to Venus-related things. And so where do those lines have to be? What do they look like? The process of disillusionment, which is already underway, has got to be somewhat challenging and painful in many respects. So as a result of which, because there's more to come, and because there's a narrative between the new set of eclipses and the handoff from the old set of eclipses, some of this processing may be internal when it comes to relationships. It doesn't have to be something external that's brewing. And some of it could be, it's an escalating situation. A resetting of boundaries, I would pose, is what we're all after. And this resetting of boundaries work may start to occur in greater earnest after the 25th, once Venus goes direct. And maybe to some extent some ground is broken till the 27th of July, but then maybe it takes August and to some extent September to cement what that looks like. I don't know. Wait and see. Let's see how that goes. I'm just looking to see in my notes if there was anything else I really wanted to kind of pose and say and talk about. I think I've conveyed, broadly it fell into two areas as far as I was concerned. Be careful of making drastic changes. Cutting off relationships, changes in appearance, spending money in finances, or reevaluate things. That's what some previous videos will encourage you to do. And number two, stay with the process and investigate and deal with the disillusionment, because it's something that needs to occur. And rather than be in the haste of, and it's a developing situation with the new moon and the full moon. It is a developing situation. And it could be multiple situations. It could be that certain blows have reached multiple parties. Multiple parties that are unconnected in some way. It has to do with relationships. And it may somewhere have to do with relationships where the sign of Gemini sits in your chart. It could be revisiting old relationships and old relationship issues. Could be at the heart of it. And somewhere the sign of Pisces and where it sits in the chart, and somewhere the sign of Sagittarius and where it sits in your chart is impacted by all this. Especially as you head towards June the 5th. It's going to be April the 5th to June the 5th. Something brewing there saying, hey, I'm here. I'm the new set of eclipses. How are you? Ready to go? Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. That in itself is a lot to think about. Pay attention to the dates I've mentioned, those 3 dates. Look at my Venus and Mercury in Gemini videos. I'll do a new moon in Gemini video. Fasten your seatbelts. It's eclipses, changes in multiple areas to some extent. Those will get developed. I'm signing off. Feel free to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you're notified whenever it is I do new videos. My contact information is in the subject area. If you want to reach out to me for information regarding a reading, you can do it there. If you want me to make an easy-to-read version of your chart that you can use to see which sign is in which house and what those houses stand for, you can contact me there. You'll need to know your birth time for that. I'm going to leave it at that. There's plenty in this video to think about if you feel that it applies to you. If it's not relationships and disillusionment there, see if there's something brewing in terms of the art. I'm not qualifying it. I'm leaving it exactly where it is. Okay, more to follow.